拟进入金门禁限制水域，请立即转向驶离。
Chinese military vessels increase large-scale drills around Taiwan. New documents allegedly reveal Ko Wen-je's personal role in pushing a corrupt development. Taiwan's premier faces lawmakers for the first time since they rejected his cabinet's budget. Plus, Hurricane Helene strikes Florida as officials warn of unsurvivable conditions. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Liao. Defense officials say there has been a surge in Chinese military activity around Taiwan, with Beijing carrying out 2 straight days of large military exercises. The Defense Ministry has accused China of doing all it can to build up its military while creating an illusion of dialogue. But China insists its actions are legitimate. Liao reports.
An unwelcome vessel enters Taiwanese waters off Jinmen Islands. One of 4 Chinese Coast Guard ships spotted in just one day.
拟进入金门禁限制水域，严重破坏区域和平稳定。 影响海上交通秩序及航行安全，请立即转向驶离。
After a couple of hours, the Chinese vessels complied, but the government in Beijing maintains that these waters and the rest of Taiwan are part of its sovereign territory. And they've been making intrusions like this one more frequently. 32 Chinese military planes entered Taiwan's air identification zone in 24 hours. This just days after Beijing launched an intercontinental ballistic missile that passed south of Taiwan.
因应中共全面提升武力、我战略预警时间大幅缩短等威胁，国军会持续的陆力建军备战，增强不对称的嚇阻战力，并且深化官兵的爱国信念，以建构可视的军事力量以及防卫韧性，来捍卫国家主权以及百姓安全。
The self-ruled island nations' leaders say that the increasing frequency of their neighbours' incursions threatens not just Taiwan, but also regional stability. But China is not backing down.
解放军为台岛周边海空域组织演训活动正当合理，我们将持续加强练兵备战，常态组织有关军事行动。
Taiwan's defense minister warns that exercises like these could be cover for a surprise attack, and that it is becoming harder to tell what is behind the rise in Chinese military activity.
所以它其实就是在增加一些政治上的压力。那这个战术我们看到很多，也就是北京它想要达到政治目标，但是不要去触动战争的情况。
It's less than a week before China's National Day, often a time it flexes its military might and reiterates its goal of bringing Taiwan under its control. An outcome Taiwanese leaders say they're determined to thwart, ready to stand in defence of Taiwan's sovereignty and its people. James Lin and Liao for TaiwanPlus.
For more on the outcomes of President Lai Ching-te's civil defense meeting, Reese Ayers spoke to Enoch Wu, the founder of Forward Alliance, a national security and civil defense think tank.
So, Enoch, you were there yesterday with President Lai and the rest of the committee. Can you tell us, were there any kind of concrete outcomes from this first meeting?
Emerging national security challenges will have to require new approaches to risk management. And that has to include whole-of-government coordination. And that's both vertical and horizontal, as well as a whole-of-society coalition. So as a concrete next step, working groups have been formed, and they will meet monthly to begin asking the tough questions and to involve more members of society, including industry. One of the responsibilities of each committee member, the way I see it, is to leverage their respective expertise and their professional networks to help the administration check for blind spots. And it's also going to be our job to help the government approach public-private partnership in a way that ensures success And that means with a focus on collaboration, on communication, and on information sharing. Because whether you're a government agency or a private enterprise or a civil society organization, we all share the same risks.
So you were there representing Forward Alliance, a civil defense think tank. What kind of role does Forward Alliance play in civil defense and disaster preparedness?
Our mission is to work with established grassroots organizations to share the emergency response knowledge, the skills, and the resources so that they can continue helping their communities in times of need. Our job is to empower the amazing community leaders and organizers and activists that are already committed to service on a daily basis, and that is our role.
And what risks is Taiwan facing that the country feels the need to put so many resources into disaster preparedness?
Typhoons and earthquakes are unfortunately part of our geographic DNA, if you will. Second, we face a volatile and oppressive neighbor in the Chinese Communist Party. And third, we must also deal with the effects of extreme weather and climate change, just like everyone else. So putting all that together, we face a multitude and variety of risks. And that is why enhancing resilience is so important.
Why might it be in the international community's interest to help Taiwan stay safe and stay free and open?
We share many of the same risks, and we want each other to do well. And doing well means to be safe, safe from harm, safe from oppression, safe from coercion. And it means to be free, free to choose, free to live, and free to chart our own path. And so facing these common challenges, I think when each one of us is safe and free to thrive, we are all better off.
That was Enoch Wu, founder of Forward Alliance. Former Taipei mayor and one-time presidential hopeful Ko Wen-je has been hit with fresh allegations of corruption involving a shopping mall project. A city councilor claims Ko personally pushed the project through, skipping over the proper channels. John Van Trieste has more.
Former Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je has already been questioned 4 times over corruption allegations from his time in office. But there are yet more questions for investigators to ask, especially after a new accusation from a city council member. Ko has been arrested twice since the end of August. Prosecutors believe while he was still mayor, he may have done a corrupt deal that helped a shopping mall in the city make big profits. What might have been a local scandal is national news because Ko's the founder and central figure of one of Taiwan's big 3 political parties, the Taiwan People's Party. Ko's downfall could bring the rest of the party crashing down. Those hoping to vindicate Ko have more bad news, though. City Councilor You Shu-hui of the rival Kuomintang has dug up records she says show Ko personally pushing the project to dramatically expand the mall's floor space through, skipping over the proper channels.
参加这一场会议的都发局的同仁，那他的解读是说，就是当时柯市长应该是就是要求说，直接做成560，然后不用经过都委会所以用行政处分的方式上网公告。
And some from Ko's other rival, the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, have taken up this accusation too.
在的都显示柯文哲在整个过程里面其实是知悉的，而且柯文哲甚至在内签里面其实是有签名的哦。然后现在摆烂，说自己完全不晓得，我觉得这真的是说不过去哦。
But Ko's backers say these rivals are just trying to shield Ko's predecessor as mayor for his possible involvement with the mall.
根据专家意见，上网公告究竟哪里做错了？监察委员也是在102年跟104年2次对郝市府提出纠正报告。游淑慧议员现在只是在替郝龙斌转移焦点，卸责罢了。
Whatever motive may be behind it, this fresh accusation adds fuel to a scandal that may upset the balance of power in national politics. Klein Wang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Premier Zhou Rongcai has met with the head of the legislature, Han Kuo-yu, to try to break an impasse over next year's budget. The meeting across party lines comes after opposition lawmakers voted down the cabinet's proposed spending plan. Louise Watt has more.
This is the second time opposition lawmakers have kicked back the budget to the cabinet for reworking. If it doesn't get approved, the government would still have money to function next year, but new policies and projects would not be funded. That would mean no salary increases for teachers, civil servants, or military personnel, and it could affect the government's plan to build its own submarines to help it resist a Chinese invasion. Opposition lawmakers are blocking the budget largely on procedural grounds. They say funds that should be in there are not. But some analysts also see party politics at work, with the opposition questioning the $3 billion the government is pouring into the state-owned and loss-making energy company. Such support is not a new thing. Past governments have also supported that kind of policy. The budget impasse is another example of the difficulties facing President Lai Ching-te's government, which has to get its policies past an opposition-dominated legislature. Joseph Wu and Louise Watt in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Ishiba Shigeru is likely to be Japan's next prime minister after becoming the new leader of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. The leadership contest went to a runoff after none of the 9 candidates won a majority in the first round of voting. Ishiba is expected to replace Kishida Fumio as prime minister. Kishida decided to step down as leader of the party following a series of scandals and low approval ratings.
勇気と真心を持って真実を語り、この日本国をもう一度皆が笑顔で暮らせる、安全で安心な国にするために、石破茂全身全霊を尽くしてまいります。どうぞよろしくお願い申し上げます。ありがとうございました。
Lebanon's foreign minister has renewed calls for a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in his address to the United Nations General Assembly.
يعيش لبنان هذه الأيام أزمة تهدد وجوده ومستقبل شعبه ورفاهيته وتتطلب تدخلا دوليا عاجلا قبل أن تخرج الأمور عن السيطرة وتتساقط أحجار الدومينو المترابطة ويتحول العجز من احتوائها وإطفائها.
The United States, Australia, the EU, and several other countries have called for a 21-day halt in fighting in Lebanon. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has poured cold water on that proposal, telling reporters ahead of his address at the UN that Israel will keep hitting Lebanon with full force until they have achieved all their goals. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has promised unwavering support for Ukraine in its war with Russia.
The United States supports Ukraine not out of charity, but because it is in our strategic interest. We will continue to provide the security assistance Ukraine needs to succeed on the battlefield.
Harris, who is also the Democratic presidential nominee, spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Washington. Their meeting comes after U.S. President Joe Biden announced more than $8 billion in new military assistance for Ukraine. Zelenskyy is also set to meet with Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, who has threatened to cut off U.S. support for Ukraine if elected. Hurricane Helene has made landfall in Florida as a powerful Category 4 storm. Residents across the U.S. state have been urged to evacuate in anticipation of unsurvivable conditions. At least 3 deaths have already been reported. Reese Ayers has more.
As the ocean swelled and winds picked up, Florida, a U.S. state of over 22 million people, braced for the impact as Hurricane Helene made landfall. Gaining strength as it moved towards the southeastern U.S., Helene was at Category 4 when it made landfall. Helene was downgraded twice throughout the night, to a Category 2, then 1 hurricane, as Florida absorbed the brunt of the storm's force. With winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour and storm surges of up to 20 feet, the federal government warned the hurricane's impact will extend far beyond Florida.
I just want everybody to know that this is going to be a multi-state event with the potential for significant impacts from Florida all the way to Tennessee.
The U.S. National Hurricane Center is warning the storm will create unsurvivable conditions in parts of Florida. Evacuation orders were in place across the state, with one county sheriff's office asking those who don't leave to write their personal details in permanent marker on their arm or leg in case they need to be identified. Some residents followed the warnings, with the danger already impossible to ignore.
So when I saw the floodwaters already halfway up to my house, I thought, man, I need to go.
Others said they'd prefer to hunker down and weather the storm.
I'm just gonna say I ain't worried about it. I mean, I got faith, and I trust in my faith that God's gonna keep me safe, so I'm not worried about it.
Speaking at a press conference as the storm made landfall, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis urged people to take refuge, confirming at least one death in the state, warning the worst is likely yet to come.
And so when Floridians wake up tomorrow morning, we're going to be waking up to a state where very likely there's been additional loss of life, and certainly there's going to be loss of property.
Striking just before midnight on Friday, the extent of Hurricane Helene's destruction will become clearer when the sun rises as the storm continues north, deep into the heart of the U.S. South. Eason Chen and Reese Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, how and why China is attempting to erase the name Tibet from museums internationally.
Namaste. I'm Priya, originally from India, but I've been living in Taiwan for over 30 years. This small island, which is right next to China, is known globally not only for its semiconductor industry and the vibrant democracy, but also for its warm people and its diverse cultures.
Namaste Taiwan, coming Sunday, September 29th, 9:30 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Amid the ever-present threat of conflict with China and of natural disasters, President Lai Ching-te hosted the first meeting of a committee made up of civic leaders and defense officials. Their goal, how to prepare better for any future crisis. Chris Gordon reports.
The country needs to prepare for a crisis. That was the message from President Lai Ching-te as he convened a new committee on civil defense. The committee includes representatives from civil society, security, and religious groups, coming together to discuss how they might work with the government during times of crisis.
中央到地方政府要进行全方位的验证和演练，也要扩大跟民间团体和社会力量连结，彼此携手合作，以系统性、专业性方式找出问题，拟定对策，落实执行。
The hope is that the country will be able to handle not only the medical and social demands of a crisis, but also maintain its critical infrastructure, including energy, communication, and financial networks. The government is planning at least 3 exercises over the next year.
2月的时候能够进行一次桌上兵推，明年3月希望能够在某一个县市进行一个地方的小规模演练。6、7月我们希望能够结合汉光演习。 进行一个比较全面性的前导性的演练。
Such drills wouldn't be a first in Taiwan. Both government and civil groups have conducted civil defense drills in the past. The meeting came on the same day that the Defense Ministry said it detected Chinese military joint combat readiness patrols around Taiwan, and days after a major Chinese missile test. The country has also been hit with natural disasters such as earthquakes and typhoons this year. The government's focus on drills may have its limits, however.
开完会之后，能不能落实到政策面来讲，其实它的效果很有限。有些演习或演练，它没有办法拟真。譬如说，发电厂爆炸。
Whatever its effect on policy, it seems President Lai is at least trying to draw more attention to the need for preparation across the country, as the natural and man-made risks to Taiwan don't appear to be going away anytime soon. Devin Tsai and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Tibetans in Paris took to the streets to protest Chinese pressure on French museums. Two museums changed the name of their Tibetan exhibitions, using the Chinese name Xizang to refer to Tibet. One of the museums apologized and changed the name back, but the Tibetan government in exile in India says cultural institutions are increasingly bowing to Chinese pressure. For more on the issue, Gino Lopez spoke to Pengxuan Li from the Taiwan branch of Students for a Free Tibet.
Why is the name Xizang largely contentious among the Tibetan people and different from the name Tibet?
Tibet is the English term that directly originated from the Tibetan term bird. Actually started from 18th century, referring to like the people and the people who own this similar identity. Well, Xizang is the romanization of the Chinese name of Tibet, but usually referring directly to the central Tibet, which in Tibetan they call Wuzang. Well, oftentimes when Chinese authority using the term Xizang, they want to replace and using it to replace Tibet. This is like a whole set of, I would say, attempts to really assimilate and synthesize Tibetan people into Chinese, into ethnically Chinese.
Why had the two French museums decided to change the name of Tibet into Xizang in their catalogs?
Well, like in their own statements and accounts, they've never really revealed their own, like their actual, the actual reasoning of why they're doing it. Like one of the museums, they actually replaced their Tibetan room into Xizang room, and another is trying to downplay the Tibetanness of their exhibitions and make it into like the Himalayan room. This is actually one of the first success we see. The whole series of attempts of the Chinese authority trying to like wash the narrative of Tibet and put it into like a more China-centric. This also demonstrates that you know, outside the people that are politically familiar with the Tibetan issue, how easy it is for the Chinese authority to really alter the narratives. And we've been witnessing that since, I would say, early 2010, when the Chinese authority and representatives has been active in all kinds of the international platforms.
And why is there a push from China to homogenize the Tibetan culture and push other countries to adopt the name Xizang?
It is pretty reasonable that they've been doing that because the Tibetan diaspora has a strong presence around the world. We see His Holiness Dalai Lama hold a huge, influence to people, whether they're believers in the Tibetan Buddhism or not. This is one of their really important work to change the narratives on the international space, including, Tibet has been historically part of China. So all these attempts are really similar practices of the PRC government, the Chinese authority to really implement, to really project their power to the world and to claim their sovereignty over the so-called national minority.
That was Pengxuan Li from Students for a Free Tibet. Residents of Keelung are getting ready to decide whether to recall the city's mayor, George Xie, and a recent poll suggests those who want him out may not have the numbers to remove him. Kata's Quarata reports.
In just over 2 weeks, a vote that could remove this mayor from office. In Keelung, Taiwan's northernmost city, residents will decide on October 13th whether they have confidence in George Xie or if they want him gone. A petition to oust Xie collected more than 36,000 signatures, enough to hold a formal recall vote. Those who want Xie out say he abused his power by transferring the property rights of a mall to a company owned by the family of a former girlfriend. Earlier polling suggested the mayor's opponents might succeed in removing him, but more recent polls indicate their lead has evaporated. In a poll of over 1,000 Keelung residents from late September, 40% said they did not support a recall of the mayor, while only around 25% said they'd vote to remove him. Others said they were undecided or would not vote. In a recent interview, Mayor Xie also said his supporters were more likely to show up to vote, pointing to an opinion poll carried out by his party, the Kuomintang, the main opposition in the central government.
不同意罢免的人就是反对罢免的人，从一开始的不晓得要投票，从一开始的61比22，22是我们这边不同意罢免要出来投票，最后他们这边从61降成了36，我们从22变成了49。
For a recall to succeed, at least 25% of Keelung's eligible voters need to vote to remove the mayor, and they need to outnumber the votes for him to stay. Xie has touted his accomplishments since he took office at the end of 2022, saying he's improved the city's finances. But the city's former mayor, Lin Youchang, a top official in Taiwan's nationally ruling Democratic Progressive Party, has pushed back. He says the city's financial situation is only good because of money allocated by the central government, and has attacked what he calls a lack of talent in Xie's administration.
如果没有人才的话，就算有钱也只会干蠢事。
These clashes are just the latest in months of political back and forth between those who support Xie and those who are working to remove him from office. But in the end, it's Keelung's voters who will deliver the final verdict. Dolphine Chen and Cadence Coranta for TaiwanPlus.
And we'd like to thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. You can visit the Taiwan Plus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, Hollywood has added a star to its Walk of Fame. Batman is the 14th fictional character to get his own, joining the ranks of Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, and Shrek. I really didn't think Batman would lose to Shrek on that one, but here we are. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.